All right, so this week, what I want to focus on was, as we talked about it last week, was it's actually it's 3 levels, or you could say 4 levels, or you could say 5 levels. So let's look at um system administration. And when I say that, I mean I'm speaking Linux system administration. And then let's look at this week we're gonna look at internships, the beginning of Linux system administration, system integrator, system engineer, system architect, um, CTO, CIO, and how a lot of things determine stuff, and then how a lot of and how a lot of different uh, skill sets you can acquire that are just not they're not technical, but more people based. And I don't want to call them soft skills. I just want to call them, I guess, life skills per se. You want to look at it like that. So I think what I'm going to do is I think I'm going to go actually backwards. And um, let's start with from the beginning. I mean, not beginning. Let's start from the end. And let's go with system architect. All right. So here is, and then I'll go into some other stuff. So here is general GNC, and this is what I'm gonna blow this up. Some things they're saying that they want the system architects to have, and then I'll give you like an overall guidelines class that you can follow as well. So design plans and implement system and network architectures. All right, right there, automatically what I hear is you need to understand how an overall system works. In other words, not just the infrastructure, but above the infrastructure, maybe how the application interacts, the security behind it. When I hear network architecture, a total layout of how the network is laid out and how data flows throughout the network. And when you hear that, and you can see the next line, network architectures that are highly performable, scalable, fault tolerant, secure, and compliant. In other words, they got some compliant rules they must meet, maybe SOX or PCI DSS or HIPAA, or uh, they may need to meet some DISA requirement, DoD requirement, or something of that nature. But knowing those things, just just putting that in your head right off the bat is something you could jot down. And my best advice is when you're looking at text edit, not notepad. When you're looking at these jobs, is you read through it and then literally open up notepad and just write down your initial thoughts of what you see and what you think it could be or whatnot, because that helps you as you keep going. All right, so how do you acquire those skills? By this time, as a system architect, you've gone through the Linux sysadmin, you've gone through, you've handled some networking, you've handled some storage, you've looked at security, you've looked at um, just a totality of the infrastructure and the systems itself and the application databases and the whole nine. You've probably been through those things throughout your career. Uh, you could if you were, I guess, hustling enough, you could probably say you'll be a system architect, depending on how long you've been in and how quick you learn. You can probably do it in 7 years. You could probably do it in 5. It could be 10. It depends on you and the industry you're in and how aggressive you want to be. The next one, it says develop and refine document policies, processes, and procedures. And I'm gonna get into this after this, but I'm going to mention it now, and we'll talk about this is the TOGAF, and just make a mental note of that, and we'll come back to it. But that's going to help us. So KPIs and service level agreements, making sure we hit our metrics, our targets, our backup and recovery, making sure that we are that the application is performing the way it's supposed to be performing, no bottlenecks, no network bottlenecks, no hardware failures. And then with that being said, looking at where does your infrastructure sit? Does your infrastructure sit in the cloud? Does your infrastructure sit on premise? Does your infrastructure sit in the cloud and on premise? Do you have a failover between the two? So, somebody monitoring that, and just think about it like this: as the system architect, you can't do everything. So you need to understand how things work, and what kind of skills your people may have, and what kind of skill sets that they need to acquire, and then be able to delegate and help them, get up to speed. One rule of thumb, that we always like to say, if you can't train your people up where they can take over your job, you haven't done your job. And that's just a rule of thumb. Sounds crazy, but it's the truth. You should be able to have a well-oiled machine. Like, if you walked away, somebody else could come in and take your place and do the job, and actually move into a position where you can go and do something else. Because if you can do every single job at that particular company, then 9 times out of 10, eventually you're going to get bored, and it's not going to be fun for you anymore. So you want to be able to have that ability to move on. The next one, provide assistance and issue reports through incident management. So with incident management, um, there is a book. Um, and I forget the name of this book I'm thinking of. It's at home, but anyway, when we're here we go, maybe this one. When we're thinking about incident management, so good prime example would be this week was who was it that got hacked? Oh, Homebrew for Mac, which is the installer for on your Mac laptop, so you can install other packages, kind of like Yum installs RPMs and packages for Linux. Got hacked. So you get hacked, and then somebody installs this hacked software on their laptop or inside of uh, a server that's hosting personal data or financial data, or what we like to call PII. Then you're gonna have to, if you don't find out, and when you do find out, you're gonna have to create an incident report on, like, how it happened, what happened, uh, wh- you know, what steps did you take to take care of that machine, and what steps did you not take prior to that, to make sure that that didn't happen. Where's your lap? Where's your gap in security, and so forth? So those are things that you want to be knowledge of. And when I say this, the incident management goes at all levels, from an internship, a system admin, system integrator, uh, system engineer, CTO, the whole nine, the whole gamut. It's just something that everybody should be doing. The next one is manage multiple projects. So this what I like to call is time. How much time in your day do you have to manage the project and all the other various things that you have to do? So there's no way that you can really be sitting there doing the technical things, even though you want to. There may be a little one-off project that you can do that doesn't take a lot of time, or you know how to get that project up and running. So those kind of things are just a prime example of what you would need to have as the system architect. So as you can see here, 10 years at an enterprise level IT organization. How do you determine that if a company is 50 or 25 or 100 or 10,000? And it just depends on what the workflow is. And then you have 7 years as a system administrator or engineer. And then they talk about the different things that in their inside of their network or inside their infrastructure that they have, infrastructure technologies. Then they start talking about VMware, Hyper-V, and VDI, virtualization, SAN storage, designing. Probably more getting into not designing just from a infrastructure perspective, but designing from an application perspective and designing from the perspective of having uh, your different team players and who has the strongest suit that maybe you could put two people on a project and so forth. So understanding your team as well too is part of that. Any questions so far on that, or did that make sense to you? Okay, so I pulled another one. Let me grab it here. All right. So this one isn't a system architect. And then but don't let me forget. You guys want to let me forget TOGAF. Let me. I'll wait. Let me do this one. So, quality engineering internship. All right. So, and this is with Red Hat. And remember, we spoke before about Red Hat, and we also had a Red Hat speaker as well too. When we're talking about an internship, we're talking about the basics, right? We want you to come in with some basic skills and some basic knowledge of understanding. Trying to find my mouse here. It went away. Where'd she go? All right. Anyway, we'll go down. I see it, but I don't want to leave my screen. Oh, there it is. All right. So here they talking about for this is just a quality engineer. Um, Communicate with developers to gain understanding and knowledge of assigned features. So what I hear is communication. Create test plans under the guidance of senior quality engineer and or team lead, which to me sounds like if you don't know what a test plan is, look it up first, find out what a if they have an example test plan, and then do your research and then ask for more guidance on that, and participate and contribute in weekly meetings. Report accurate and regular results. So your test plan and things that you discovered along the way. There's always in companies, there's always someone that's written documentation, and then nobody's possibly hasn't followed up on that documentation. And so you'll probably be the one reading that documentation that somebody wrote and trying to understand it. And if you don't understand it, guess what? Nobody else will either. So that's when you get a chance to shine and actually uh, make some improvements. Make use of test infrastructure and infrastructure tools. Become familiarized with automation. I've been preaching automation, 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 and how that works and what that flow could look like and different tools we could use, and also provide feature and process improvements. Again, your chance to shine, your chance to not just to be a part of the team, but to excel into something else. And so they want someone with some basic Linux administration, some Bash scripting skills. I talked about this before. Linux Academy is a good one. Another one that I didn't bring up is IT Pro TV. I use them. They're based out of Gainesville. They have live courses. The way their courses work, they have what they call like on air, and they have people that actually are standing there talking and going over stuff live, and you can interact with them live and when they're doing something and they don't know something, kind of similar to here, but they're live and teaching. So that's pretty cool. I should post that link in case you may like that format better versus the Linux Academy. And then their courses, um, that they have for Linux are here: becoming a Linux power user, becoming a Linux server admin, system, Linux for beginners, command line, cloud, shell scripting, so forth, Red Hat Enterprise. And this is what they have there. Linux Academy probably has a little bit more in-depth stuff, not a little bit, but a lot more in-depth on the Linux side. All right. So certifications won't be required. They probably just want to know if you understand what they are. And then here, basic experience with Python. And I had a conversation inside of Linux Academy Slack group about some basics, because some people are starting out with their uh, basic programming languages or scripting languages should be. I'm gonna always go with Python and Bash and Go, and some people throw Ruby in there. But we also said, let me see if I can pull it up. I think it was CS50 programming class. This one here. And I agree with this one in terms of understanding just some basics in programming, like what is an object, how do you you know initiate instantiate an object, how do you uh what is inheritance, uh what is a constructor. Those basics of programming help you later on when you start working inside of Python and dealing with methods and dealing with objects and passing parameters and so forth. So every sysadmin should at least know how to write a for loop, how to read a file, how to open a file, how to write to a file, how to um, retrieve information from a database, how to and I'm not talking about using tools that help you, like PHP, was it my PHP admin or MySQL admin? I forget all the different ones they can pull from the database. But I mean, like, literally knowing how to write queries helps you out in the long run, because you may sit down in Python and want to connect to a database and using Python, and then pull out some data that you need. And again, I like to call it massage the data, because you may get you may pull something back that you don't need. So how to chop that up. And that's when you start getting into like awk and said, to get back the data, chop up the data that you want or whatever. Or you may use something in Python to chop up the data. That's better than awk and said. So those are the kind of things. Post this. I think I posted this, but no, I don't think I did here. So anybody that wants to apply for that particular job, you can, if you're starting out with Linux and you already know. So the next thing, I went and found this today. It's downloading right now. Let me bring this over to the screen. All right, so I went and found this DevOps hiring guide. It was on opensource.com. You can go there, and you got to put in your email address, and then it'll show right on the screen, and then you'll get the DevOps hiring guide. But what I went through here, um, and discovered some stuff. Let me see. Does the page show up on what they're talking about? Okay, here we go. So going through here, they talked about titles, and it's a conversation that we had this week at work. Is a what is the Linux system administrator, or is the system administrator dying? Is that term dying? So we I'm gonna get to your question, but I don't. This is my thought process. I don't think the sysadmin is dying. I think it has morphed into several things, and those I should say several jobs, and those several jobs are, you could be a sysadmin for a company and all their stuff is on premise. And then you could be a sysadmin slash cloud admin for someone who has a migration from on premise to the cloud. Then you could be just, it was a job up here that called me when I came up to Virginia for interviews, and they were like, all we want you to do is automate everything in Ansible. And so that job title became an automation engineer, but you still need a foundation in understanding Linux in order to do that. So I think the term sysadmin is a really blanket statement, and out of that has morphed other career paths. That's my thought process. So when you look at jobs, you'll see system administrator, system engineer, system integrator, and then under that you'll see understand file systems, understand kernels, and then below that is like doing cloud and backups, and below that is how do we migrate to the cloud. So it has morphed into a lot of things. So your question was open. No. So is the trend that sysadmins essentially have to become developers? And how do you level up your skills when you have so many different other technologies to learn? So do I think by trade the sysadmin needs to know some basics of development and life and processes and procedures, and also life cycle management. And that's another talk that I want to get into. Probably we could probably do that next week too. Well, no, the 15th, I think. I know for a fact we have someone coming on the 15th. So I think that we're gonna do open shift next week. But I just wanted to, I had to double check and make sure they're coming on. But when I talk about life cycle management, um, and this is a good book, and I'm gonna get back to this DevOps hiring. So continuous integration and continuous delivery, two different things but go cohesively together. And then we had a talk on this before, Jenkins as well. So let me give you what I work on every day right now. Right now I have a situation where I'm coming up with processes and procedures to do automated everyday tasks, meaning that I want to take someone who's sitting here doing something that they've been doing every day for the last 3 years and automate it because I need that person somewhere else. So in order for me to do that, in order for me to get that person to move somewhere else, I have to set up the workflow. I have to look at the documentation that that person had or don't have, create the documentation, get all my questions answered of how things work and what is the flow and the process, and sit with that person, and then turn around and come up with um, come up with a test plan, come up with a automated way of doing that job, because I have so many other things that I need that person to do. So I have 10 people that I have to manage, but I have to go through everybody's workflow. It's actually more like 14 people, but I have to go through everybody's day to day and come up with a workflow that's automated and understand what they do, and hopefully it's documented. So I don't have time to um, go over to someone and say, "Can you um, learn Ansible today?" First, I need to understand what they do. Then I need to come up with, well, what's a good way for them to automate their task? then turn around and say, okay, well, once we understand what you do, this is what Ansible is, and this is how we're going to use this, and then this is how you automate that task. Does all of this make sense to everyone? And so in the process of all of that, it's also coming up with continuous integration, continuous delivery, because the one thing I should be able to do, I should be able to take a server out of the box, put it into a rack. um, the profile for that server is already created. I don't care what that server is. That profile is already created. So if I need a Windows 2016 Active Directory server, I can stick it in a rack, hit a menu, click on it, and it's ready to go. And I get an email saying that that machine is ready. What has that machine went through? That machine has went through the machine has went through life cycle management for testing. That machine has gone through my test cases. That machine has everything that I need for them, including security patches, and as well as being scanned from EVSS. And when I say EVSS, I mean it's Tenable, that is used to scan your machines for vulnerabilities and so forth, and taken care of. So I had to come up with that for all 10 people. And in that, this is where the system architecture comes in at. In that comes in who has the strongest capability to say, okay, well, once I get this part done, I can hand this person this for them to complete this, because one, I've got it all documented. Two, they understand whatever tools I'm using, Ansible, Puppet, Chef, Jenkins, or whatever, and I can hand them this to complete. But I need to get it started. And while they're doing that, they're also cross training as well, because now that person that was over here that did that one task and has done that one task for 5 years, and no one ever knew how to do his task or her task, or never seen the documentation. Now that person over there now understands what that person has been doing, and now they're interacting with each other. And now they're also, not only are they interacting with each other, they're also learning from each other about, well, he's really strong at this, I didn't know that, and she's really strong at this, or I could teach them these things. And so now what you're doing is building up your team as well too. So that's a little bit of how I view things with continuous integration, continuous delivery, testing, and all that falls under that system architect that we were just talking about. So with the DevOps situation, and I should also add, I'll get to it later. Don't let me forget. Hold on, let me write it down, because I will forget. TOGAF, and I want to talk about also want to talk about waterfall versus agile. And that's something you need that's something you just need all around, not just as a system architect, but it helps. Okay, so in this DevOps hiring guide, I went through it. I didn't read it in depthly or in depth. I don't think in depthly is a word, but in depth. Um, what I did find is some general things that I think you can follow. So again, here, traits of valuable team player. Just talked about that. Tips to hire the right talent. We're gonna dive into that. Question hiring managers should be prepared to answer. DevOps strategies to attract top talent. It kind of goes into what I talk about, hiring expertise versus developing talent. And then there was another one in here. Oh yeah, the salaries, of course. Excuse me, and the trending and emerging specialties. So let's kind of go through this really quickly, because I got so much more that I need to cover, that I want to cover before next week and following week, so we can get back to the basics. All right, so an overview of the hiring landscape. So in this section, they and let me clarify this with DevOps as well too. Is the development team and the ops team coming together, is this is what it was supposed to be, and breaking down the barriers or silos. The development team just don't develop their tools or their application, and then in our world we take it and say throw it over the wall and say you figure it out how it works. Ops team, and then the ops team is stuck with trying to figure out this tool and how it works. The DevOps was supposed to be everybody coming together. Hey D, can you post that book? Was it called the one we read? Gosh, I think you know what I'm talking about. It'll come back to me. But anyway, um, that book really helped with understand. Yeah, the Phoenix Project. Yeah, that book really helped to try to understand. If you don't want to read it, I'm gonna tell you how I read this book. Uh, I read the book by listening to it. It's a great listen. So great audible book. Just the having a car and ride. So yeah, so and this may be a little small here. Let me blow this up. Yeah, I hope that's better. All right, so let's say 60% are looking for engineering jobs. Remembering you don't need to have an engineering background to have an engineering job as a title. It does help. But what's funny? Sidebar. You can get an engineering certification, and not I don't know many people that have gotten this engineering certification. But this is it right here. You can literally go in and get an engineering certification. But we'll talk about that another time. But let's get back to this guy. Just a FYI. All right, so okay, one other thing, as you develop your talent and your putting more tools in your toolbox, always contribute to an open source project. And it doesn't have to be you writing code. It could be just you reading through the documentation and somebody had and it's supposed to be D, or a comma and it's supposed to be a colon. Just really simple stuff. Pick a project that you're passionate about or just want to learn about and go through it, or write a blog or something. Just put yourself out there some so people can recognize you and help you hone your skills, or just really help yourself hone the skills you already have. All right, so let's go through here. All right, so yeah, 156,000 DevOps engineer jobs open on a typical day in September of 2017. There's no way nobody should never not be unemployed in the field, but it's a way of not being employed in the field if you don't know the skills that you need. So that's why we're here. All right, we got to get the resumes. All right, so the titles. All right, so this is where it can kind of get confusing, because you could be a Linux admin and actually be a DevOps admin as well too, which is weird in a sense, because I think also the titles can be misleading, because what you have to understand is everything is broken down into labor categories. And so based on a particular labor category is how it determines what your range in your salary should be. So you have to kind of be careful when you're looking at jobs. Say you are a junior sysadmin and you're going for a junior site reliability engineer. Well, the site reliability engineer may pay more, and they do some things that are similar, but they really want the application up and performance of the application up at all times. So that may be a little different, but then you'll have something that's a DevOps engineer and you'll look at the actual guide and it'll say the same thing. So it's weird. So that's just one thing to be aware of. And in here, they talk about the titles. They talk to some CTOs. And then they give their references of their links, and that's the one reason why I downloaded this, because I wanted the references that they used. And I'll go through these. Most of these I've already been through. I've already been to Cloud Bees and most of this stuff here. Red Hat, yeah, Enterprise, Project. That's a good website. But I got them for the references. And so, what you need to know about your salaries. Well, again, my philosophy. Most of these things we off about 20 to 40,000. So I would just add that. That's just my philosophy. But hey, that's just me. And then they give an average. They give you a place for an average. And like Glassdoor, I was sitting with some Red Hat engineers today, and on Glassdoor they were saying a senior consultant makes like around 120. But if you got down to the very fine print of this, and it might come up, I don't know. If you got down, no, I didn't. If you got down to the very fine print of that, the fine print said on the average most of everyone was that was a senior consultant made between 155 and 170,000, but it was in the fine print. If you just looked at it, you wouldn't have seen that, which was funny to me. But so like I said, with Glassdoor, you got to kind of be careful. All right, so let's go a little further into this. I went to the website opensource.com, and that's where I find it. I'll get back. I'll look it up here in a minute, so you can grab it. Or I'll try to post this in Slack. I can post it in Slack. All right. So the next one is the hiring challenges. All right. So this is really good. How to tell a great DevOps shot from a mediocre one, and to me that sounds like how to tell um someone who's helped building the team versus a bad team versus a team that doesn't want to move forward and wants to stay behind. And you can get all of that from the interview and the type of questions that you ask. And you can also get it from the person that you're interviewing with. You can kind of tell if that person is gun ho, let's move forward, or like, no, I've been beat down a lot, so we're not going to do any of the things you're talking about. That's nice. So you can kind of tell the excitement someone may have or the problems they may have on their team. All right, so um, oh, did I miss it? Well, that's fine. How to stand out and win a DevOps role. They go into that. They also have their sources. And then here's the one that I really wanted. We should use and start looking at resumes. We should download some resumes online and look at how people have formatted them for their resumes and so forth. We talked about that last week too. So in this DevOps hiring guide, it was really informative on some things, and then it was like, okay, some of it I was like, yeah, okay, right. But like here, where it says, so recruiting and hiring and onboarding a new employee can cost the company as much as $240,000. You may lose what they know. You may lose who they know. Your team could go into a storming phase of group development. Your company risks disorganization, so forth and so on. So these are things to think about when you're leveraging uh, whether you should leave a company or what your value is to that company or what your value is as you start your job search. These are very important things. And there's like hiring going wrong. And here's some questions they have, like the interview challenge. They they go over some questions and stuff, and it's more stuff out there. But I just thought it was a good comprehensive little guide to follow and so forth. So let me do this. DevOps hiring guide. In case some of you are not in our Slack group, you may want to just download this guide for yourself. And here's the link. Right. Yeah, we're gonna probably do like a little workshop. I've been talking to some people trying to get them some not hiring managers, but more engineers, senior engineers, and hiring managers. Not necessarily recruiters in and I want to get them in a session, and we do like a workshop, and it'll be virtual where you can talk and ask questions and give you some tips and stuff. So that's what I had for that one. All right. So now my next thing was this. This comes from study.com, and this talks about how do you become a system architect, and it walks you through a video, got a little video of it, and walks you through like what they think. Again, this salary, this was 2016, that's actually low, but they have like a little step-by-step guide, and they give you some ideas of stuff. But I just thought it was just a little informative, and go from there. But it's just something, you give you some information, and you can start digging around. So that's that one. The next one is this one here is called Guerrilla Interviewing Architects. So let me pull that up. All right. So what I can say is it depends on who's interviewing you. That you're going to have a really good interview, somebody who's been an architect or somebody who's been a developer, and you can tell when someone has been a developer. And then it also depends on what kind of architect that you're going to be, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. All right. So, hiring great people, they start right here. Here it is right here. Maybe you're a technical architect. Maybe you're a solution architect. Maybe you're a senior solution architect. Maybe you're a sales solution architect, because there are sales solution architects, principal architect, system architect, application UI, infrastructure, astronaut, integration, iOS security, and then remember I mentioned about the TOGAF. We're going to get into that. But in this article, they just talk about the different architects. And I behoove you, for all of you that don't know that these different architects exist, is to start looking up these different architects, and what you may see. Just hit up Indeed, Glassdoor, Clearance Jobs, the Ladders, any job site that you can find, and just type in technical architect, and then put Linux behind it, or Windows, or whatever, or cloud, or what have you, just so you could get a filler, and you'll probably look at 10 jobs. And this is another thing I do. I look at 10 jobs with that name, and I pull down the list of skill sets that they have on them. And then I find a commonality between those skill sets, between those jobs. And and I treat those as my basic skill sets that you should have for each and every last one of those jobs. So if it's a skill set of, if you pull down 10 jobs, and you pull down, get the commonality of those skill sets, you can now say you probably know probably 50 to 75% the most people. And then if you do know those things, apply for a job. Or if you don't know those things, learn them, study up, and then apply. But at least now you know that that's a common pattern that you've seen that you need to have for a job. And I give you this link here too. Any questions so far? Okay. Is this information okay? Is this good information? Does it sound redundant or anything? Okay. All right. So the TOGAF. I'm gonna pull that up. This is something I started playing with. I actually got it for $5, I think it was. But this guy right here, there's a reading portion of it, and I forget, it's broken up into two parts or something like that. But with the TOGAF, you can do the TOGAF part one, and then you can do TOGAF part two, and then you can do combined. And why do you care about this? Okay. Well, the reason why you care about this as a engineer, architect, integrator, it just kind of gives you a one leg up on your team, or one leg up in your career. Let's go to a different site. Let's just use Glassdoor. I don't like them, but no offense, Glassdoor, love you. We're looking to get some people hired, but so I see your question. Let me put this in real quick, and I'll answer. Okay. Um, so let's look at TOGAF. Let's just type TOGAF, and then let's see what happens. Again, see that enterprise architect, solution architect, principal architect just comes back, falls on the architect. Let me answer this question. I have a question about getting intel at the company you're applying to. Are you for that? How do you usually do that? Do you LinkedIn and stalk? I mean, I think everybody uses LinkedIn, their Twitter page, finding out people who are on their Twitter page, on their Twitter hashtags, things they've done in the community, point of contacts there, uh, what conferences they're a part of as well too, because a lot of times those big companies or something like that, even some small ones, have said that, hey, we'll be at a booth at such and such, or we'll be here. So it's just a way that you can find out, even if they're promoting a product or someone you could talk to at a conference you're going to. Just all around, just all the intel that you can get really works. It's my thought process. So, as you can see here, principal architect, solution architect, enterprise architect, all that was talked about that last little bit that we were just going over. But let's look at the enterprise, let's look at the solution, and let's look at the principal. And let's look and see what we say here. Okay, responsible for assessing, defining, and champion IT architect structural principles and so forth. And while we say that, you should be looking at this TOGAF, because let me see, does he break it down? No, it's not a breakdown here. But I have it, and I should. Oh, here we go. All right. So in here, let me see how to study. My favorite part of test taking. Oh, he don't break down each class. There is the way that the class is broken down, and you can follow through. I think they're like 5-minute videos and so forth. But let me go back, and I want to get back to the jobs so that you can see. Doo-doo-doo. Let me see, standard events. Let me see, do they have the breakdown? Okay. This is just a program, not the actual thing. Certification for individuals, director of people, TOGAF certification, exam summary. Okay, part 1. Let's see if we can put it up. Okay, it's a little small. Let me make it a little bigger. Here's the study guide. Oh, this really sucks. You gotta get information. All I'm trying to do is get the information. All right, I'm gonna have to dig, and I'll put it in. I'll put it out in our Slack group. I think I put it out there before. Let me do a quick search. Let me do a quick search on our Slack, because I'm pretty sure I put this out here before. August the 8th. Twitter TOGAF. I did, but that was for a job and leadership. Let me see. All right. Overview. Business benefits, evolution of TOGAF. Okay, here we go. Business architecture, application architecture. Thank you, pop up, for coming up. Where are you? We want you to go away. That's not what I wanted. All right. Technical architecture, data architecture, what's new in 9.1, content modeling, partitioning, architecture repository, enterprise continuum, the ADM guideline. So this is just like a overview, and then they get into like job titles that you would search for this. And the other one that I didn't mention is a VP of engineering. A lot of pop-ups on this. Let me close this down. But VP of engineering. Let me give you this for the Slack group. Oh, thank you. All right, so back to this glass door, and let's roll through this really quick. Okay, so we looked at the TOGAF, right? And so we know that the these three jobs or four jobs, however you want to look at it, all have TOGAF in common. So you know that you could go follow. You can follow along with you know what the TOGAF offers and some of the actual ideas that they offer will help you with these jobs and help you in an interview to get these jobs. All right, so create project technology roadmaps. And again, I talk about this before. I say it time and time again. I don't care if you're an intern. I don't care if you're a system architect. I don't care if you're a CTO. Always look at stuff from the 10,000-foot view and then drill down. Always look from the bigger picture and then drill down. It looks scary in the beginning, but then you break it up into modular pieces and it helps you with understanding everything as a system and as a whole. All right, so maintain positive relationships. In other words, communication, talking to people, seeing what their needs are, what they're trying to do, how can you help, how can we as an enterprise architect help you who just won this contract or you're pushing forward to get your application into microservices. How can we provide help to you and your team to get you there by ensuring the infrastructure that we have set forward meets those goals. What is the CTO talking about doing and the CIO, what direction do we want to go in? We'll probably lean back on us to figure that out as well too. So these are the kind of things that you want to look at in a big picture. And even as an intern and a Linux admin beginning, these are just things that I just personally would look at and ask questions for the roadmap, because now gives you one the idea of what your skill set should be and where we're pushing forward. Like if you're over here learning Azure and they're like, no, we're not even going into Azure, we're going to go OpenShift, then you're like, oh, okay, well, I need to shift, so that it gives you that, helps you define yourself or redefine yourself as a team player, or as a team, or as a leader. Performs benefit analysis, coaches, mentors, and less senior architects, things that you always want to do. And then infrastructure capacity recommendations for new applications and systems, things that you're already doing, things you may not be doing, things you're doing wrong, recommendations, things that you've seen. That's just that one, right? So now let's go look at the solutions architect. Guidance, under general guidance, solution thought leadership, okay, collaborating, governance, consulting, documentation, strategic thinking, system implementation. All starting to sound the same, right? Consult with infrastructure and security application projects to fit systems to architecture. Sounds the same. Again, sounds the same. So if I was looking at these and I was interested in this, I would be looking at the TOGAF in order to help guide me in an interview process for this particular position and possibly even getting the certification. And then now let's look at the principal. All right. IT liaison, IT team security, assist, design, implement, technical, participate, establish, good governance, so forth and so on. They want to use Azure, J2E, Architect, Scrum, Agile. We got that on the list. prior manager or director experience, must possess well-developed verbal and communication. So as you can see, with the TOGAF, it kind of, there's no kind of, it has led you down this path of understanding uh, what you need. Now the difference now of understanding what you need is you have to implement that. Now the implementation is where you kind of get your hands dirty. No, kind of, you will get your hands dirty on implementing that. But remember, you are in a leadership position, so you have to delegate and you have to understand your strengths. You have to understand your team strengths. You have to understand where they need help at. Also getting training, looking at training budgets, the whole nine of where you can leverage things to make a good, strong, cohesive team so you don't stress out. So that's where that's at. Any questions? All right. So going up the ladder here, and I'm gonna come back down. How do I become a CIO or a CTO? Next step up from system architecture, um, in a way, um, and that's company dependent. So we did a series on YouTube. Shout out to YouTube. Shout out Women in Linux. If you haven't signed up to our YouTube and or liked us on YouTube, leave comments. We don't get paid until we get 10,000 viewers, so it's okay. But we still need your help. Um, we did a series down here on CTOs where we talked about how did you become a CTO? How did you what were your skill sets? What were your what books did you read? What groups did you travel in? What training did you get? So I set out on this journey because when I look across the landscape, I don't really see any female CTOs that are of color, i.e., black. Um, or I don't see any female CEOs either. But I'm like, I don't think I want to be a CEO as much as I do a CTO. So I set out on this journey. So here is a good link to take a look at, but there's also, and I'm not promoting them by no means necessary, but I just want you to know your options out there. Carnegie Mellon CIO, and these have popped up a lot. CIO program has popped up. So with this CIO program, I think it's like 3 days in DC and Virginia, and then you go home. And I think that's how it works. But they've since added the CISO, and it's a certificate, and the CRO. You can look through the classes and see if there's something that you want to do: IT, acquisition management, enterprise architecture, leadership. Not a really technical type of certification, but a really broad certification. But I think you can kind of compare this to the TOGAF one and see how some of the classes can relate. And you can say, okay, well, maybe I can find something similar to this online about what they're doing. One thing I think is very interesting is IT acquisition, not necessarily the project management, but IT acquisition. Like your company does something and you get acquired by a group, and that's one way to look at acquisition, and then the other one is securing your infrastructure is another way to look at acquisition too. But just things to think about, strategies and so forth. This is just, I just use this as a guide to go over stuff. So let me see. All right, so here is this one. Here is from Forbes. So here they talk about 13 skills you should still practice and hone in as a CTO. Constant education. I talk about that. You're always going to be constantly learning, always constantly reading. Um, Diplomacy and patience, in other words. Not everybody is going to be on the same wavelength. You just got to have patience. Effective hiring, people skills, um, strategic thinking seems like a common theme, right? Communication, we've heard that before. Listening, oh wow, here it is. Coding, I kind of call it scripting. uh, Depends on the kind of CTO you're going to be too. The ability to set and execute your vision, in other words, have a plan. um, Security and privacy management, time management, customer service and communication, and mentoring are all great things to have, all things that you're going to always continuously do. You do this with your family, kids, brothers, sisters, just in general in life, and hone those skills. All right. So this one here talks about the problems of the CTO role, and that's something that um, we haven't discussed a lot. We talked about the highs, but we haven't talked about the lows. That one team member that refuses to write down uh, how they did something, or like you figure it out, that doesn't want to work with anyone, or they just don't want to work with you. That's something that we got to work on. I think in tech in general, but I think it's people. So in this right here again, they talk about what a typical day would look like, and remember, I personally think there are four types of CTOs. I think in here he mentions two types of CTOs, but he gives a day to day. See different types of CTOs. Excuse me. He gives a day to day of uh the of a CTO, and just from this person's view. So just a good something to know and have. And as you think about being a system architect, do you want to roll into a CIO, or do you want to roll into a CDO, certified data officer, or CTO, certified not certified chief data officer, or chief technical officer? Things to think about. Any questions so far? No. All right. So we talked about all the high level stuff, right? We talked about CTOs, we talked about system architecture, we talked a little bit about the TOGAF. Agile versus Scrum was something else I wanted to cover, and then I'm going to talk about interns and beginning sysadmin. And I want to have a visual here. All right. So this one here, you see right here, is more. Um, let's see. Let's go to this site. All right. So they talk about agile, and I know Dee has some references that she could possibly post, or I think we have some, and I know we have some inside of our Slack group. But here is a good view, so you could see like the 12 principles. And I'm not sure how old this is, so don't shoot the messenger, just find some updated stuff, but just to give you an idea. But here's where they talk about agile. So waterfall is what everyone was doing, and waterfall was too slow, too much, too time consuming. And so people started wanting to do sprints and deploy things quicker. You got some people that do, you know, uh, thousands of deployments a day, versus some people do deployments once a month. So you want to be on the team that's doing the deployments daily, because you're going to learn very quickly with that team, and you're going to also learn some failures. Without failures, you can't have success. If you're doing something right all the time, how do you ever improve, right? So you have to just think about it from that perspective. And then with Scrum, not Scrum, Waterfall. Let's look at images. Oh, here's a good one right here. Let's see if we can visit this page. Okay, yeah, here we go. Yep, that's always good. So, um, you look at this model and study it. This will be, as you grow into your career, this will be a question. This will be an interview question. People will ask this: what's the difference? Does your team follow the waterfall model? Does your team follow the agile model? What is the difference between the two? These are things that you need to know. And you also want to know this if you walk into a situation where you come from an agile background and the team is following waterfall. And so you want to be able to have that knowledge of saying, well, do I really want to go back to that? And why are they doing that? Or do they want to make a migration and you may be coming on board to help the team make a migration of that? So it's just something, to keep in mind. All right. So let's get back to the basics. And when I say the basics, internship with Linux. I think we still have our intern on here. Yeah. Our beginner intern, she's still here. Congratulations. Is still here. Uh See, I feel like this would be my weakness. I'm coming from a waterfall into an agile world, right? It won't be your weakness. It'll be your strength. You have to take that and run, flip the tables and say, well, what do I need to deprogram and what do I need to do to get on board, and just start learning. That's it. You at least you know a method. Some people don't even know what a method is, so a methodology is. So hey, you're winning. So beginning Linux basics. I talked about this before, but let's talk about this from I talked about it earlier and I talked about it before. Let's talk about this from a intern perspective. So let's see if we can find Linux intern. Let's see if this comes up. Let me shrink here. Um, let's go internship and let's see what we're looking at here. All right. Cloud development intern. Let's go San Jose. Remember now, if you're going to look up these jobs, let's look at it from a perspective of, hey, look up cloud development intern here and then take this same name and let's go and see if we can find it again on Indeed and see if we can find some commonality. Not loud. Not that either. Cloud. See if that comes up. Let's see. Does it come up again? Cloud system engineer. Okay, let's go with that. Senior cloud. Let me go to internship. Okay. See, we got a cloud automation engineering intern. Good. This is good stuff. So you get a chance to see some data engineering intern. All right. And then cloud, that's the same person. Airwave engineering intern, HP. All right. So let's look at the first one. Backed by Sleep IQ Lab, strong first-hand experience in building highly scalable, fault tolerance, resilient, connected devices, system architecture that supports million. That's an overview. Nobody's doing that when they're first as an intern. Maybe not. Hands-on coding primarily in Java. So this again, cloud development. So you're developing probably a tool set here. And then knowledge of SQL, NoSQL, familiarity with Windows and Linux, strong knowledge of cloud computing. And this sounds like somebody coming out of college and may know this, but I bet you will probably get hired if you know Java. Here's really what they want, and the rest of this you'll learn on the job. That's how I look at that. So if you have Java skills, I would apply, and not worry about the rest. The rest you can go through a AWS class over the weekend and say, "Yep, I deployed an EC2 instance and I put my code from my GitHub or my GitLab onto my EC2 instance and it ran." Like that's an intern, so you're gonna be learning there. All right, so cloud systems engineer. All right, first one we looked at was a cloud development. Now we're going to look at the systems. Let's see what we got here. Self-motivated, server operating systems, Windows and Linux, SAN and clustering, load balancing. You're not going to know that coming out of college unless the college has actually had a program that goes over that. Scripts, again, how to troubleshoot would probably be your strong suit, and how to troubleshoot comes from your programming background or just knowledge in general on troubleshooting. Like if your light is out in the hallway of your apartment, what's the thing that you do? Well, you check to see, one, if you paid the bill. Ha ha ha. And the other one is the other one is you check also to see if the light switch is working or did the light bulb blow. But think of everything you do as a, there's a task, there's a step-by-step method you do for troubleshooting. So those are just things that when I look at this, that's what I would do. And then when they start talking about, and we talked about this load balancing, go look up what is the basics of load balancing and how does that work, because that would be an interview question, like, have you deployed a load balancer? I did play with it in Amazon, and I do know the basics of how load balancing works. Oh, well, can you explain that to me? Sure, I can explain that to you. Go watch a YouTube video. Go on Amazon and look at how they explain load balancing. In fact, um, load balancing, Amazon. Mm-mm-mm. So here they will walk you through load balancing, and they will have examples, and they also have white papers. Don't be afraid to read white papers. All right, so that was that one. All right, this one. Cloud automation engineer. We talked about automation before. Let's look and see what they're looking at. So Airwave, a cloud automation engineer. Not a very good description here. Wireless AP engineer, Airwave engineer, network management policy, ClearPass, Aruba. This is not a good one because I have no idea what a cloud automation engineer is unless they're, and I say that with the respect of what tool set are they using. Are they using Terraform? Are they in Amazon Cloud? What is the team using itself? Are they migrating to something? These are things I would want to know before I would apply for this job. So I probably wouldn't apply, or if I did apply, I would have to ask some questions. Let me see. Let's go down. Hold on. See what they got. QA automation. Okay, here we go. Strong hands-on experience, Ruby, Python, Chef and Puppet. That's what I was looking for. Like, what's your tool set? Hands-on cloud experiences, service experiences, ideally with AWS, Git, version control. And you could take all this right here and you could really probably do this in a weekend. Like, you really could. You can learn. There's a in Linux Academy and on Puppet's website. There's a Puppet that you can do for like in 2 hours. Git has a online walkthrough tutorial. CDCI with Jenkins. I think that class is like 8 hours or something like that. High volume, high availability web based application experience. Maybe, maybe not. Um, Ruby and Python coding, yes, you would want to, like I said before, Ruby, Python, or Go will be your thing. And automate testing. I would just say there's so much information. How do you organize things? You learn. Do you rely on job descriptions of these types of jobs you're looking for? So I organize again myself by again looking at different jobs and what's a commonality between them, and say, okay, well, at least I know these things are common, so let me look at those things. And then I say, okay, the rest of that is probably at that particular company. But I know one thing that's always going to be the same. Linux is always going to be there. Scripting is always going to be there, and that includes Python, Bash, and Go. Automation is always going to be there, and you can automate in Python, you can automate in Bash, and you can automate in Go, or you can use tools such as Puppet, Ansible, Chef, Salt. Um, and the next thing that's going to always be common is testing, and testing can come from in Jenkins, or you can write your own test plan. And then another common theme, company dependent as well, is some type of cloud architecture and security. Those are always common themes, and either one of those skill sets will get you a job, really. But all of them together gets you more money at a job. So it depends on what you want to do. But I know those things are always common, and I don't care what job we've looked at. Those things have been common. The other thing that's common in all jobs: are you a team player or not? Uh, Communication and getting along with others. So you can kind of form your own technology stack and say, okay, this is what my basics are. And then when you get to a particular job, they may say, oh, we deal with NetScaler, or we deal with Cisco routers, or we deal with Juniper routers, or we deal with only HP products. But that's that company. That doesn't necessarily mean that all companies are going to have it. It's just a basic knowledge level. But if you have the basics, you can kind of pivot and go where you want to go. And that's how I keep everything in order. Um, this data engineering, savvy, blah blah blah. All right, here we go. And then remember, this is a data analyst, so you're probably gonna get some of this work in school, from working with prior experience coursework at the academic projects, SQL queries, Tableau. Some colleges have access to Tableau, and you can go from there. And I want to say Tableau has a free class. I think they do, or like a free certification training or something like that. I gotta double check with Teradata. I think you can get it through Teradata. All right, and we looked at Airwave and we looked at load balancing with AWS. So those things are what I consider like your basics, um, for understanding one, how to read job description, and where your skill set going. And then the one other thing is, how do you keep up with what the industry is doing, which is a whole nother conversation, because it depends on the industry. What NASA and SpaceX are doing, and what General Motors and Ford are doing for cars, in terms of DevOps and their infrastructure and stuff, are four different industries. There is some commonality, but you're gonna have to drill down into those talks, those interviews, the YouTube. So I usually hit up, and this is why I like going to conferences. I usually hit up YouTube, and I have a couple people that I follow um, on here. So I'll go and take it, HP technology. And I also look at Bright Talk. I don't know if you all are familiar with Bright Talk. And the other reason why I look at Bright Talk is because it helps me with getting my CPEs for certifications, which is great, so that I can focus on other stuff and not have to go back and retake a test again. So that's where that goes into play. Oh yeah, and I told you ITV Pro TV. Um, you can use those classes to help you keep your certifications as well too. especially Security Plus or something of that nature. So CompTIA takes those classes. So let's go in here. That's popular talks. I want to go back to right. Let's go here and look up TOGAF. Let's see. All right. So that is in another language. Enterprise architecture that came out in 2017 is recorded. Unfortunately, knowing TOGAF at Archimate does not help you much. Key elements to see. Beginning are what did it say? Understand what enterprise architecture is, how it relates to your other development disciplines, what are your use cases, what are key things, and so forth. And she goes into her own spiel, but at least you know that you can come over here and search titles and look at things that you want to find out. You see ITIL, enterprise architecture, AWS, Red Hat does stuff on here, and they probably have their own channel. And you can go and learn stuff from them. You can probably also do let's see, they got summits, but you could also probably find stuff about Docker. Um, and starts talking about Docker and storage and so forth. So I just use Bright Talk for, hey, I want to get an understanding of something. Some things are cheesy. Sometimes their talks are cheesy. But I try to do that. And another thing you can do on YouTube is just a little FYI. If the if the video is under an hour long, you can get a transcript of it and just read it, and then pull out the highlights instead of sitting there watching a video. So that's just a little trick that sometimes you can use. Like, you got a video, if it's under an hour, you can get a transcript of it and then just read and pull out the highlights from that. Like, cut and paste that into a document and keep it moving and going about your business. If you wanted to. But those are things that I like to look at. And in terms of beginning Linux, again, some type of scripting, and just in Linux in general, some type of scripting language that you're familiar with, automation tool, understanding backups, understand how network flows, and then what data flows through the network, and then some basic understanding of networking itself, and security will help you along the way. And I'm saying basics. I'm not saying that you need to know what TLS encryption is in terms of what ciphers it use. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying you need to understand what it is. So if someone asks you what it is, you can say what it is. But those are the basic things. Any questions or anything? I don't want to stop recording too.